Blessings, everyone. This is Ladybeunstoppable. Happy Sunday to y'all. If it's your first time, subscribe. This is a long video, so I'm not going to talk for too long. In this one, Andrew Holness will be giving his speech at the opening of the Jamaica Fire Brigade in Montego Bay, St. James. This new establishment is valued at 580 million Jamaican dollars. This was initiated in 2019 through the World Bank Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Act, where they got a loan, and it was managed by the Jamaica Social Investment Fund. So this is a good thing for Montego Bay. So guys, go and watch the video till the end. Let me know what you think. As I said, it's a long video, so just go and watch a video right now.
Sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah. Ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the moment where we'll have our very important keynote address to be delivered by our most honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica. Sir.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. I was at an event last night, and I made the point that one of the most rewarding things in government is to be present, breaking ground, launching, or opening. Yes, it shows that you are a working Prime Minister. And I have made a point of keeping all my shovels and hats. They don't allow me to keep the scissors, but I have enough shovels and hats and hopefully plaques to know I could safely say that I have broken ground for far over 100 buildings and in terms of openings, I'm certain that I've gone over 100 openings and launches and so forth. So if you're measuring the productivity of the government, then that is a very good metric. And by all means, this is a government that is performing. I don't really like the announcements. So do I have to make announcements because it is a part of my formal duties? What I praise and what I'm always happy to do is the openings, because that now shows the completion of the cycle. So yes, I will do the groundbreakings and I will make the pronouncements and the launches, but what really shows the achievement, it is the cutting of the ribbon and the opening ceremony. Now, ceremony is an important part of Jamaican culture. In fact, it is an important part of our political practice, that for everything the government does, we have to have a ceremony for it. And it is important. It gives you a platform to brag, and to make your political points. So prepare yourself, Janice. But the ceremonies don't have to be eternal for them to be immortal. And as I say that, my mind reflects upon a former politician, a former chairman of the PNP, Bobby Pickersgill. In Parliament, he would preface his presentations with that phrase that the speech does not have to be eternal for it to be always remembered, meaning immortalized. And I intend to follow that today. Now, having said that, Wayne, you need to share that book from which you get all those jokes that you give before you start your speech. You agree with me, Janice? I wondered where he got all those jokes. So, to save time, I would say, good afternoon, nice and decent people, all of you. Give Mark my regards. I'm extremely pleased to be here today for this historic handing over of the Montego Bay Fire Station, to be called, I'm told, the Area 4 Regional Headquarters. This has been a long time in coming, and I'm certain our firemen and women, as well as the residents, are very happy with this. Our fire brigade has a long history, dating back as far as 1879. That is over 150 years. And the brigade has played a crucial role in the development of Jamaica's disaster prevention, management, and response. As we celebrate our 60th year of independence, we look at the opening of this impressive building, the center of operations of the brigade in the western part of the island, as another important milestone in the life of the Jamaica Fire Brigade and another important accomplishment in Jamaica's history. This building, I'm certain, will last 100 years or more. It is well built. It is properly designed. But I will say this to you. If what we expect of the future of Montego Bay materializes, then this will become a mere substation in the next 20 years. Yes. So the building will be here. But if the city expands and grows as we expect, then you will fast outgrow this facility. And that is what we want to see. We want to see the growth of the city. But in an interesting way, the city can only sustainably grow and expand if we build facilities like these. And the truth is that governments for the last 50 years, Minister Davis, have not been able to make these kinds of investments. Why haven't we been able to make these kinds of investments? Primarily because we did not manage our fiscal affairs well. Now, I want to make a subtle point here. A review of Jamaica's financial history would conclude that Jamaica borrowed to finance its development. There's nothing wrong with borrowing. The real question is, how much revenues are you going to be earning from your borrowings if you use them productively? How are you going to control your expenditures such that you create the fiscal space to to repay your debt. If you continue to borrow to finance development, you are going to eventually narrow your fiscal space such that all your revenues have to go back to repay interest and repay debt. And therefore that narrows your ability to make investments. So for many years we have been doing that. And we end up, when we borrow, not only to build edifices like these, but we end up borrowing for recurrent expenditure. So we end up in a position where we are disinvesting in our economy, disinvesting in our infrastructure. A decade ago, the nation as a whole came together. We were on the brink of a crisis. Well, we were in the crisis, about to go over the precipice. Some would say we went over. But we came together as a nation. And in that coming together, the financial sector, business sector agreed that, they would postpone the repayment of some of their debt and other things. Government agreed that we would put in place certain legislation and we would change the way in which we spend, no more run with it behavior. And the unions agreed to a wage freeze. That was a signal moment in Jamaica's history. Signal moment when all the stakeholders came together and we overcame those challenges. Jamaica has it within us to overcome all the problems that we face, all the problems that confront us. We have it within us to do it. If it is one thing that I am proud of this country about, is the strong civil society that we have, the strong social conscience that we have. Now, we are starting to see some light. As a result of that, our debt to GDP ratio, which sometimes hovered as high as 141%, some even said it went up to 150%, depending on how you measure it, came right down to now we are about 96% of GDP. We were 94% just before the pandemic, trending towards 90 and below. Pandemic hit us, it went up back to 110, but look how quickly we have recovered. We have gone right back down now to 96%. The end of this fiscal year, we could be at about 90% or lower, depending, of course, on how our revenues recover, how we manage our expenditure, and if there are no more shocks. Because we are an open economy. And that means that we are susceptible to shocks. COVID was a shock. The war in the Ukraine was another shock. A country like Jamaica, through those two critical shocks, managed to stay stable, recovered our unemployment rate. We are now down to the lowest ever in our history at about, 6.7% thereabout, 6.2%. Lowest in our history. Growth is starting to return. Visitors are starting to come back. Our children are going back to school. Those shocks were not of our making. We must not make shocks for ourselves. I want to repeat that. We must not bring crisis onto ourselves. Because the posture of the government is not an antagonistic one. The posture of this government is to take on the challenges, but to do so in a respectful way, because we recognize that the power of the government does not only lie in the authority of legislation, but it really lies in the people. And when the people act reasonably, everyone benefits. So, as the Prime Minister of the country, I want everyone to appreciate that I am indeed your steward, your servant. My job is to manage your affairs. And it means that there has to be an incredible balancing act, because we have to look at everyone's affairs. Everyone. Teachers, firemen, traffic, security, the national debt, and we have to put all of that into an equation that will deliver growth and employment. And we are trying to solve that equation, which is very complex. So I urge everyone not to make the situation more complicated than it already is. It is one pool of revenues. And if we do anything to stop the flow of revenue into that pool, there will obviously be less for us to debate about how it is to be shared out. So whilst we have concerns, many of them genuine and legitimate, and they should be spoken of loudly, don't take action to stop the revenues from flowing into the pool, which you will need to negotiate about. It is not in your interest to do it. Not in your interest. We are committed to the well-established principles of industrial negotiations. And we believe that process must work. I'm very happy to acknowledge Helene is here representing obviously the union that represents the fire workers, the firemen and women. And I want that message to go out. Our industrial relations, attitudes and behaviors, I believe, would have matured significantly over the last 50 years. And I think that we can find ways, if necessary, to express your disgruntlement, your upset, your concerns for the government to hear, without depriving our children from the education which they have been deprived for the last 2 years. It's not in our interest to kick over our own milk. Again, I therefore use this platform. We acknowledge and understand there is agitation, but act with reason. Let us protect the revenues coming in so that there is actually something to negotiate over. Don't go back to the last 50 years of contention. What we have seen is when we come together, we sit around the table, we negotiate, which we have, it is better for everyone. So I'm not speaking to any specific group or any specific issues. I'm making the general comment, which I hope will be understood and taken in the context within which I meant it to be communicated. So let me go back now to my script. The previous fire station, and I see Eileen laughing. I hope you got the message, Eileen. The previous fire station, known to many as the Barnett Street Fire Station that served Montego Bay and Greater St. James for several years, was in a terrible state of disrepair and became an uncomfortable place for members of the brigade to work. In 2006, the facility was demolished and the firefighters were temporarily housed at a facility in the Montego Bay Freeport. And that was supposed to be a short-term arrangement which lasted for 16 years. This new building, therefore, will transport our fire brigade into the 21st century. With features and amenities, it is the first of its kind in the English-speaking Caribbean, and our fire brigade will now be able to advance its firefighting services in all areas, including training. Now, Minister Mackenzie, you didn't tell us the cost of this building. You did? Then let me repeat it. It's 580 million Jamaican dollars. $500 million, a little over $500 million spent on constructing this building. And it was done, obviously, in partnership with the World Bank through a loan provided under the Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project, and it was managed and facilitated by the Jamaica Social Investment Fund. And JSIF has been doing a spectacular job in ensuring that social investments, things like these, are done. They are done on budget, they are done efficiently, and their value to the public is secured and well received. The building is 34,073 square feet, and the superstructure stands at 4 stories high, and it's constructed with a steel-reinforced concrete. It's a steel-reinforced concrete structure. Now, you will see that the building boasts 5 engine bays. It has emergency vehicle bays. It can house 140 firefighters, 70 male and 70 female. It has office space, proper kitchen and pantry facilities, a well-equipped conference center. It has an electromechanical room, a library. It has an officer's lounge. It has an underground water tank. But when I toured a few fire stations, I believe it was 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, a firefighter said to me, "Prime Minister, we are here, sometimes we're just sitting down, waiting on a call. We should have a gym." And in fact, I'm trying to recall which fire station it was, but they had it was in Hanover, yes, they had an improvised gym that they all came together and they had a bench press. And I said to the minister, listen, all our fire stations should have a gym. And I am happy to say that this fire station has a gym, which I hope it will be used so that our firefighters will be all fit and ready to go when called upon. And indeed, we have now started to put in gymnasium in all our fire stations. So that's very good, Minister. Our first responders must be in the tip-top shape and healthy, ready to respond. You know, I wouldn't want the firefighter to turn up on the scene and find that he's not flexible and fit to respond. And I see all the firefighters there nodding that they are all ready and able to respond physically. Now, I want to place this structure in context. This obviously is not the only fire station that we're building. This might be the one in which we have spent the most resources on and the most equipped. But just a few weeks ago, Minister Mackenzie was in Old Harbour, and he opened one there, and I am told that I have to slot out in my diary for at least 2 more openings, which obviously I like to do. St. Thomas is next. St. Thomas is next. But I ask the Jamaican public to, just for a minute, with all the noise that you have to process, all the challenges that you are confronted with, but just to honestly reflect on the performance of the administration in the build-out of critical public infrastructure that increases the capacity of government to serve your needs. Look at what we're doing with our police stations. Significant investments, the largest ever investment in the national security apparatus. It is large, but I would dare say it is still not enough in order to truly be commensurate to the security challenges that we face. We still have a large security gap which we need to fill, and we need to make more investments in security. But when we start now to think about climate change and unpredictable weather, we have to be prepared. And so we have to build out the fire brigade infrastructure to be able to respond, but not just to these challenges that are beyond our making. But as I looked at the statistical performance of the fire brigade, I see where, for example, the fire brigade in West Balon responded to 460 ambulance runs and 402 motor vehicle accidents. And I picked out West Balon because the next highest parish would be Hanover with 185 ambulance runs and 65 accidents. The parish next to that would be St. James with 222 hospital runs and 152 accidents. When you look at these 3 parishes, they account for a significant call on the resources of the Jamaica Fire Brigade. These accidents, however, a significant part of them are motorbikes. The infrastructure for emergency response needs critical investment, because our citizens, again, by virtue of their own actions, are creating shocks to our systems. And that's just the reality. If you ride without an helmet, that's a careless act that imposes on all Jamaicans a cost in taxpayers' money for us to have to make these kinds of investments to be able to send an ambulance to pick you up, to carry you to the hospital, for the doctor's time to treat you. All because of your own irresponsible behavior of not wearing a helmet. But everyone else pays for it. So I make the point that we can't have people in accidents and we don't have the facility. So we have to make the investment to respond. But at the same time, citizens must be responsible and reasonable. in how they act towards their own society. So we are also making some investments in our roads. And I could not come to Montego Bay and not acknowledge the gridlock that exists here. People tell me that, especially when it rains, it's as if it's a parking lot. Traffic just cannot move. Again, this is a consequence of the growth of Montego Bay outstripping the infrastructure. When the fathers and founders of the city were planning and putting the city together, it may not have been the vision at the time that Montego Bay would expand and grow so rapidly. And like a typical English design town, narrow streets, narrow walkways, but that cannot be the future of Montego Bay. What exists, we will obviously have to figure out a way to make it work efficiently, but that has a real bound to it. There's not much you're going to be able to do. We really have to look at expanding the city and expanding how we provide mass transport for the city. So the government has already made the provision, and it is already underway for the perimeter road. It is now at the stage where they are doing the negotiations for the various bonds to put in place for the contracts to be operable. In the interim, the government has allocated 200 million Jamaican dollars to improve the quality of local roads, and I just want to be sure that I'm giving the right information. So that $200 million, Janice, will be invested in ensuring that we improve intersections, critical intersections, by widening and putting in the proper signaling, resurfacing the roads, and putting in various sensors where necessary. And so we're looking at, for example, the Westgate Road, Mount Salem, Catherine Mount, and Providence to Norwood. And that would create, Minister Chang, you would say that that would create an alternate route to taking the Howard Cook Boulevard. So there is some amount of interim response to the concerns that you have raised. I am not here telling you that that is sufficient or it will solve the problem. It will ease the problem. But the long-term vision would be the perimeter road and to have planned developments wherein the traffic is considered up front in the development. And that is what we are now doing. There are some other plans to come, which I don't want to announce everything here. I have to leave some for my budget presentation. But there are other plans being worked on that will improve the traffic flow, not just in Montego Bay proper, but when you are coming out of Montego Bay and you start to hit upon some bottlenecks coming out of Montego Bay. So we are doing a comprehensive program for Montego Bay, including drainage, which is, we have seen now, is critical because it appears that you now have a 2-year cycle of heavy rainfall, which causes flooding. And that can only be solved by putting in place paved drainage that is properly designed to take the water off the many roads and rooftops that are in the Montego Bay area. So I want to assure you that the government understands, we hear the plea, and look, my posture and policy is this. If people are having challenges, they must talk up about it. It's important that the government hears what the challenges are, but they should also be comforted and know that the government that you have elected is responsive and responsible. So, with those few comments and key points, let me officially open let me give it the appropriate name. It gives me great pleasure to officially open the Area 4 Regional Headquarters for the Jamaica Fire Brigade. Let me thank the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, our development partners, the World Bank, the contractors and the designers, and all in the ministry who worked on this. And let me thank the Jamaica Fire Brigade, the men and women who have labored long and hard under less than adequate conditions. May this serve you well, and in turn, may you serve the public of Jamaica.